Hey guys, Friday afternoon, Team Tim live. It's been a long week. End of the third quarter. If some of us have targets or goals for the quarter, we're wrapping up here. So exciting day. New York City, nightmare out there. 5 inches of rain in 5 hours, flood emergencies. So uh, we might duck out just a couple minutes early so I can wade to get my kids 20 blocks north of me. So I'm Tim Schnur. I work at a company called Cavello that basically does data discovery, sensitive data scanning, classification, vulnerabilities, configurations. Very interesting platform. Welcome you guys to take a look anytime. And this week's guest is Chris Kayser, who I don't want to get this wrong, Chris. So I'll let you introduce yourself. A cybercriminologist, a degree from an esteemed university up in the Northeast here. So I'll let you take that away. Before you jump in, Tim Golden, if you're listening, he's picked a terrible day to drive from New Hampshire to Washington, D.C. He wrote me about 6 a.m. and he's like, I'll be there in time for the show, no problem. He showed an ETA of 12:30, and then he wrote me back, maybe 2 or 3 hours later, 3:30 ETA. So and I can't imagine it's getting any better with the floods that are out there. So Jesse may jump on in a bit. He's also off this week, but Chris, tell us about your long background. He just kind of gave it up in the green room on how old he was, and I was shocked. You look a lot younger than 62 years of knowledge playing guitar. So
Yeah, it's
Chris,
been a
tell
long
us a little
time.
bit about yourself.
Yeah. Anyway, first of all, thanks very much, Tim. And I wish Tim and Jesse lots of safety, and to you, Tim, and having gone through the biggest natural disaster in Canadian history in 2013 in Calgary, where I was mentioning to Tim, we had 7 feet of water in the house in 2013. I know what it feels like when it floods. So Godspeed and safety to everybody, and stay safe, and hopefully it goes away real quick. Um, anyway, my name is Chris Kayser. I'm a cybercriminologist. I have been doing this officially since 2016. I graduated from Boston University. I was fortunate to be one of their first students to come out of their cybercrime program. I went through Metropolitan College. I'm a huge advocate of online learning. I've been doing it for decades, and even wrote a book called How to Master an Online Degree, A Guide to Success, after I graduated. So love online education. Basically did the same course as if I'd gone on campus at Boston University, and was blessed to do the same course in 20 months instead of 33, 7 days a week. So that made fun for my wife and I. But anyway, so I got into this. I got into it with the objective of I had a computer career for about 25 years. I was in the money management business for about 15 years. I retired from that in 2007. Finished my undergrad off, which I had stopped way back. Took a bunch of criminal justice courses, and then I was encouraged to go off and get a master's degree in criminal justice with cybercrime investigation, cybersecurity, which I did. Absolutely fabulous journey, lots of fun. I still have so many close friends, not just at Boston University, but around the world that I work with. I've been fortunate to have been published a number of times. I work with others in research. I'm currently doing research in areas. I've written a book called Cybercrime Through Social Engineering, The New Global Crisis, which sells around the world on Amazon. And I've done a whack of presentations, webinars, expert witness cases, which is a lot of fun. That's one of the reasons I got into this. But it really is, I have to say, probably one of the most interesting things I've ever done in my life is get involved in this world of cybercrime prevention. It is unlimited and exciting, and I literally learn something 7 days a week.
Awesome.
So that's me. That's what I do, and I'm very fortunate to have been invited by the Tims and Jesse to come on. So thank you for doing that. Hopefully, I can help people learn a few things today.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. So cyber criminology, and I'll kind of throw two questions here at once. How did you kind of go into a degree like that? Was there maybe delve into that a little bit, and maybe just what it is as well.
Sure.
That may be part of the reason you got into the career. So,
Well, the first motivation was a dear friend of mine who was a Superior Court judge in California who unfortunately passed away recently. We used to golf together a lot, and uh, he was sort of the catalyst to push me to pursue the master's and get into this. What happened is, whenever we were together, whether we were talking computers, we were talking finance, we were talking whatever, he said, "You have a talent that I understand what you tell me, and I'm going to tell you as a judge that with your interest in criminal justice, the fact that you can explain what I think are relatively complex computer terms, or we talk about money markets and interest rates and economies and all this different stuff, and I get it. Every time you tell me something, I get it. I would love to see someone like you in my courtroom, because what's important is most cases that don't seem to go the way you think. Quite often, it's because either the judge and or jury don't understand what the expert witness is talking about. You should go off and get a master's degree. You should go and learn all about the cybercrime stuff, and go out and be an expert witness. Well, that's what I did. So anyway, John was a great John Keating was his name. Wonderful man, and unfortunately passed away recently. So anyway,
so
what is this?
is that a lucrative career? Like, I mean, you could be the attorney, right, prosecuting like cyber breaches and things like that. But obviously, you're there. I worked in consulting for a couple of years, and a lot of that is there's a lot of math involved, right? You probably had some quants and things like that worked with you that calculate damages and things like that. Or is this more not on the damages and more specifically in kind of the nuance of the attack? And as you said, I think we'll get into this in a bit, so I don't want to ruin it,
Sure.
but the psychology of the attack as well. Kind of dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't necessarily get into the quants. It's interesting. The biggest challenge or question I get is, okay, so the data was stolen. So what? I think you begin with general terms and general effects of data being stolen, and then try to qualify and quantify why this is going to be a problem going forward. Historically, in the courts, case law does not have a lot of decisions that have gone in favor of people complaining about their data getting stolen. The number one reason is that most judges say, well, prove to me that you will be victimized as a result of your name, email, password, mother's maiden name. Tell me why that's going to be a problem. Prove to me, or prove your case that it's going to be a problem. And what I've come back with, which seems to stoke some interesting conversation, and actually I believe is going to be a catalyst to have a case that was rejected for certification, I believe may actually be reconsidered for certification, is I said to one lawyer, well, prove to me it won't. He said, well, that's kind of an interesting way to come at it. I said, if you think about this, your name, your social security number, your driver's license, your passport, whatever it is out there, and it's now out there forever. And the mere fact that because it was stolen last week and you haven't been victimized yet, you can't turn around and say, well, see, nothing's happened. Once it's on the dark web, it's out there forever. It'll get bought and sold forever. It'll get shared forever. And as cyber criminals get more and more creative about formulating attacks, they can quite easily go get this information. A case in point, and I'll digress for a second. If you look at the recent MGM hack, and I don't have all the details, so I'll use the word alleged. Okay? It's alleged that what happened was there was some Scattered Spider, well-known hacker group, went out onto LinkedIn, got information about people at MGM, called in, said, I'm traveling, I need my password reset. They called the help desk. And in their words, it was less than 10 minutes from when they started until they were in, and they shut down slot machines, electronic doors to rooms, reservation systems in under 10 minutes. Now, imagine they went on LinkedIn, apparently. How much confidential information is there on LinkedIn? Not a lot. But whatever they got was enough when they called the help desk, they could impersonate somebody and they got in. So when
Is that
somebody
usually
says,
is that where you usually go with the jury? Like, this information is an asset for attackers in the future, right? Like it gives them
Absolutely.
a leg up, right? So they're all of these, it's like Target got breached, right? These million customers are more exposed than they would have been if this had never happened, and they deserve to be compensated or punitive damages or whatever like that.
Well, it's very complex because the one thing, and I'm kind of jumping around in my thoughts here, but the one thing that I tell people is cybercrime. One thing that's so challenging about it is in your company, you don't phone up your competitors and say, "Hey, we got this cool new thing we do, and this is how we do it, and this is why we have a competitive advantage in the field, and we're going to share all our secrets with you." You don't do that, obviously, in business. Cyber criminals don't care. You've got over 5 billion, 6 billion people out there. You've got organizations. They're not worried that if they share their secrets, that that's going to cost them a portion of a target pool to win. So on the dark web, it's a badge of honor, it's pride, it's bragging rights, it's whatever to say, hey, I've just found a really cool way to go in now. I can take a name, a mother's maiden name, something else, and I just breached or infiltrated a company doing this. This is how I did it. This is how I did it through social engineering. And everybody goes, right on, baby. This is great. I'm going to use that now, and I'm going after this company over here. They share information all the time, and they do it on the dark web. And that is one reason that they progress. But people also need to understand that cyber criminals are not like script kiddies or 13-year-old kids sitting on a bed cross-legged with a laptop. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but they are very smart. They're as smart as you and Tim and Jesse and others. A lot of these people, they know what they're doing. They know how to write script. They know how
Well,
to
I don't think
share
the
ideas.
sharing the IP is is very smart. I mean, right? Like if I had an edge and I had a tactic or technique or that was working that I could monetize for a long time. I mean, right? Like, because if you share the technique and it gets widespread, of course, like there's usually a pretty long life cycle on most of these
But you're making the assumption, not to challenge you, making the assumption that all the targets will be secure enough around the world that they're all going to up their security so that particular attack won't work. I mean, there's how many companies are there in the world, and it
Yeah.
depends who you're going after. So the fact that they share it, as I
And how,
say,
just for one sec,
go
how
ahead.
often is there like webinars on the dark web being like, hey, like come join today and like we'll talk about like
Well,
social
I hesitate.
engineering. Yeah.
I hesitate sometimes saying some of the things I do in presentations, but it's out there. Ransomware as a service, for example, RAS. People say, well, you'd really have to know what you're doing. And I said, really? Well, why don't you go home to your computer and type in ransomware as a service? And depending which platform you're using, you're going to find some very interesting sites where you can go in, they take a commission, they have a 1-800 helpline, they'll step you through it, they'll tell you how to do the Bitcoin. If during your attack it's not working, we'll give you a suggestion.
Yeah.
Why not? They get a piece of the action. Somebody else is doing it, their name isn't there. Why not? These cyber criminals are very bright people.
Talk about that, the verticality of that industry, like some of the roles people play. I know there's obviously, I don't know, the scanning aspect, right? Like finding the gaps first. And I mean, you can walk us through it, kind of like what are some of the roles that people play in each of the facets of kind of like an attack?
You mean the cyber criminal?
Yeah, I mean, I know they scan ports, right? And then they kind of sell lists, right? It's almost like, I don't want to compare it to vendor sales, like, oh, we've got the list of the conference attendees, like, right? I mean, go call them up, right? Like they'll actually scan, uh there's criminals out there like widespread scanning, and then they're creating lists of vulnerabilities and like, oh, we found this port's open on this organization, or
Mm-hmm.
they've got this vulnerability, and then they'll sell those vulnerabilities in bulk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I've heard of that before, but as you said, like talk a little bit more about the industry and kind of like how people, like ransomware as a service, like how does that, I guess, how to get into a little bit more of the mechanics on how it all works. And you said it's not their name, like they have other people kind of doing the attacking, and they're using some of the infrastructure or software, or it sounds like it's almost like a contingent thing, like they're taking a piece, right, of the rewards. So I'd love to hear more about that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, as I said earlier, a lot of these folks are pretty bright. They've got your talent, other people's talents. They know how to infiltrate systems. They know how to look for zero-day events. They know how to look for these different kinds of things. So obviously, if somebody comes across it, contrary to what I'm talking about the broadcasting, it's not like they're going to get in the dark web all of a sudden and tell the whole world that they found this vulnerability, and they're going to take every advantage they can to go in. The tendency is that they will go in, make the attack, and go away. They'll go away as quick as they can. Their objective is to get in, get what they need, and erase any evidence that they were ever there. That's basically the format of how they like to do it. And they will obviously try to get into the root files, and sometimes they'll sit there for months and months and months, and you won't even know they're there, depending on the logs, depending on your security, whatever. I know they found out that some nation states at one time sitting in the power infrastructure in the northeastern U.S., and they've been there for about 4 or 5 months. And they kept wondering, what are they doing? What are they collecting? Why are they there? Because when they found out they had been there, they said nothing's happened. They haven't shut down the electrical system. They haven't shut down the water system. They haven't done this. What are they doing in there? And it could just be a matter like Stuxnet. If those that remember Stuxnet and the Iranian nuclear reactor shut down, that was a system or an attack where a lot of information was collected for a long time. Then they were able to create that attack. And actually, interestingly enough, while the attack was going on, they took over the security systems as well. So kind of like Ocean's 11 or whatever, where you look down the hallway and everything looks fine. They had recorded that, and they were playing that back while the attack was going on, so that the security people couldn't see anything was going on, et cetera. So there's a case where they were in collecting data for a period of time, and it was actually people, Symantec that / Norton that found the code that was there. So the whole idea is to try to get in if you can get a vulnerability, hardware, software wise, go in. But quite honestly, what's becoming the greater way to infiltrate is through social engineering by a long shot. You can see statistically in research that searching for 0 days or end days, looking for vulnerabilities from a technology standpoint, it's still done. But the easiest way is to use some sort of human or social engineering to attack the human element. We are the problem.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Inevitably. And that's whether we're a CISO, whether an MSP, whether we're just an employee sitting there working. I don't mean just an employee to belittle that, but my point is you can be super advanced with technology in your mind, or you could be somebody that does a more regular kind of job that doesn't need that, but you are a target. And the interesting thing is, I tell people we have to be right every time. We have to make sure that we don't fall victim. We have to make sure we're not doing the wrong things. The cyber criminal only has to be right once. One hit and he's in, or she.
Go a little bit, just rewinding a sec. And as you said, like a lot of times criminals dwell and just hang out without making kind of a move.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Tim.
How you doing?
Hello, hello, hello. Are we live?
We are live. We are live.
Hey,
safe and sound, I hope.
Hey, everybody. Thought I'd pop in and say
smoking
hello.
A cigarette at a rest stop there?
Pretty much.
Are you at the Maryland cheesecake? What is it called? Something like that? Maryland
where we
rest stop?
We're somewhere in New York.
Still in New York. Ooh.
Fording our way through all the rivers and waterfalls. And
wow.
So this is a really good opportunity to talk about disaster recovery plans, because half the darn state's underwater at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're probably going to end a little early because I got to go 30 blocks maybe in this to get my kids.
Crazy.
They're going to be excited to walk home with their backpacks. I'll tell you that.
Nice. Make sure you bring an umbrella and a boat, because I think a couple of times the water was up midway through the door of my car.
Oh, that's not good. Yeah, I believe it.
Crazy.
Right?
So Chris, what are we talking about today?
We were talking about Chris was just talking about really kind of the industry and the things that adversaries are doing. And he's got a lot of experience in court, right? Like first thing we talked about was even convincing juries that there's a problem that your data has been leaked, right? Like that's a problem. And they're like, why? And they're like, oh yeah, like so. He's had a challenge kind of navigating verdicts for I'm assuming you probably sometimes represent both sides of the coin, but we were really talking about he was just talking about kind of like why criminals dwell, right? And sometimes they don't make a move right away. They don't demand a ransom, or are they there to do other things? Are they there to continue to collect data, right? Like, there's different motivations. We're starting to go down that road of motivations and things that they're trying to get. So,
yeah, what was the stat a couple of years ago? It was like they sit in your network for 200 and something days or whatever, and they're making small lateral moves to go undetected, and then at some point, the poop hits the fan, and now they wait, right? And I would imagine partly because once the end client recognizes something's wrong, they start their investigations, they start to do their stuff, wait for insurance and defers and all of that. And I would imagine part of that, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about this, Chris, is because they could just keep raising first it's $1,000, then it's $10,000, then it's $20,000, and so on and so forth. And heaven forbid you're saving your insurance policy on your file server and you name it insurance policy, and they come across that, because then they know what your limits are, right?
Well, that's an interesting point, Tim. And I was going to touch on that as well. Just to digress for a little bit, this whole area of cyber insurance has really changed over the last couple of years. And I've sat with, my insurer for my cyber insurance and others that are into this big time. And what's changed is it used to be, just to kind of simplify it, hi, many years ago, I've been hacked. They came in, they did this. I had to pay a ransom. Insurance company goes, how much? I paid 20 grand. Fine, here's your 20 grand. Move on. Life's good. That's not the way it is anymore. There was one hack a bunch of years ago, not a bunch, but a number of years ago, where they put in about a $20 million claim to their cyber insurance company, and they got $20,000. And that's a great example, because what they did is they came back and they said, okay, let's go through a process here. Let's see what you have been doing to make your site as cyber safe, cyber secure as possible. What hardware, what software, what policies and procedures and standards do you have in place? Have they been shared with everybody? Are you checking your logs? Have you done social engineering training with your employees, et cetera? And of course, the entire box of the list of boxes, there were like 2 or 3 ticked. And they said, so let's get this straight. So you haven't done a lot. You're not doing a lot. You're not trying to protect your organization. You're not training your people, but you want $20 million? I don't think so. So now what's happening is cyber insurance companies, and I have to agree, it's a smart thing to do. They come back and they start putting the responsibility on you. It's like drive safely, and you theoretically should have cheaper insurance. Drive carelessly and you won't. Well, if you run an organization, you're an MSP, it doesn't matter who you are, and you're not going to take the time and effort to make sure you're as cyber secure as possible, don't turn to cyber insurance and expect they're going to bail you. And they shouldn't.
Yeah, those days are over. We like to revisit our cyber insurance friends every couple episodes. So, we
lost him.
Yeah, about every other month we talk to, there's a couple kind of intermediaries, either brokers, or just intermediaries assisting either MSPs or small businesses. And we're beyond that, right? Like you can't just buy a insurance policy and then behave badly, right? Like you can't, you can't drive 160 miles an hour on your auto insurance policy. I'm sorry. So,
well, it goes beyond that now, Tim, in as much as when you're applying for the cyber insurance, the questions they ask now versus the question they asked 5 years ago are night and day.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's always probably 20, I'd say a third of the show is just talking about the difference in applications from last time we talked. And like I just told you, we talk every 2 months. It changes that quickly because they're scurrying to catch up, right? Like with these, I mean, they were a joke, right? Like a year ago, it was like, do you have these 6 things? Do you have MFA? Not like, do you have MFA and what kind? Do you have, right, EDR? Do you have some kind of policy on maybe a policy on payments fraud? I know you started scratching that box a little bit earlier, talking about social engineering because it just pays so high, like invoicing fraud, things like that. Like they keep telling us that's at least 50% of the losses. That's getting grouped into this like cyber insurance bucket. Is it cyber insurance? I don't know. It actually doesn't have much to do about cyber, right? It's fooling people, right? So,
well, the social engineering part is it's predominant. Whatever research you want to look at, it can be 80%, 85%, 90, 95% of all cyber attacks have some element of social engineering. And it's at one point I didn't know if we were going to broach the subject, but it's an area that, to me, cybercrime prevention in an organization is really a 3-legged stool. First of all, you need the resources, the revenue, the budget to do it. Secondly, you need your technology and hardware, software tools to do the job. Thirdly, you need the tool to go out and educate the people who are using all this technology so that they don't get tricked into doing something. And that's right from the CEO down.
We keep going from defense to offense. I wasn't sure if we were talking about the adversary there for a second. Like, what do we need? Like, what do you need what do you need to become a hacker like tomorrow?
So, do you want that?
Yeah, absolutely. And we just had a great comment here from Lupe talking about continuous monitoring, which is like, it's something that's very kind of like greenfield. There's a lot of intricacy in terms of like writing policies that can be continuously monitored. I know they obviously do it in the auto industry, so that's something that's coming along. But yeah, I'd love to kind of pivot there and talk about like, what do you need? What do I lost my job. Like, I want to become I'm going to the dark side. Like, what do I need to become a hacker tomorrow?
Well, it could be as simple as signing on to the Onion Router or Tor and putting it out there. Say, I'm going to become a cyber criminal. Anybody out there, give me a hand. You won't have any problem finding anybody.
Gotcha.
Which is not a good thing, but and there's lots of articles out there, and it depends on the motivation. You need a certain mindset to be able to do it. Some do it for thrill seeking, like script kiddies, as they say. They don't mean any harm. You just want to jump in and say, hey, look at that, I hacked you, blah, blah, blah. Like the 12-year-old or 13-year-old that did it to NASA and was into every one of their computers, and they didn't believe him. He said, well, I'm sitting in my bed, and I just hacked every computer at NASA. That was done. And they showed up at his house, and sure as heck, they looked at his screen, and he was looking at every computer at NASA. It's 13 or 14 years old. He did it for kicks. He didn't do it to harm the space shuttle or hurt anybody. Some people want to cause reputational damage. They don't like a company. They don't like the way they were treated. They don't like their product, and they want to cause reputational damage. It could be revenge, disgruntled employees, or somebody who didn't get a pay raise, or what have you. Nation or state-based, we see that all the time. It's Russia, the Ukraine, Canada, the US, Korea. It doesn't matter. Every country in the world's doing it for one reason or another. Ideological motivations, where you have your beliefs and you believe that it's something that you want to go out and share it. You're going to share it in a vindictive way, if you will, or just ego that you were able to do it. How did you get in there? I didn't know I could get in there and hack this. And greed, of course, financial, whatever. But there's all kinds of different people. There's petty thieves, there's the old guard, the professional cyber criminals. They do this day in and day out. You have to realize that cybercrime is the most lucrative form of crime in history. You have the lowest possible chance of getting caught. You've got the highest potential for reward with Bitcoin and hot wallets and cold wallets and all these different things floating around out there. You can move money around. Yes, the authorities are on the dark web, and yes, they monitor these things. But if you know what you're doing, you can do it pretty well undetected. And depending on the severity of your attacks, it's one thing if you take $30 million out of a company's pocket. It's another thing if you're getting $500 or $1,000 or doing gift cards or a grandparent scam or something. That's maybe not top of list for authorities to go after. And of course, there's virus writers. There's people just like to do it. I'm going to write some really bad virus and I'm going to stick it out there and see how far it goes. And then when it goes, you get on the dark web and go, haha, that was me. I did that.
Yeah, that's a badge.
That's
of
not a
honor.
good thing.
Badge of honor, right? Like to build something that's, very, it's very complicated, right? To write a.
And the other thing is, I mean, there's all kinds of theoretical explanations as to why these things happen. But for example, if you see that other people are doing this, or you read that other people are doing this and they're not getting caught, and you're seeing the kinds of things like the Caesar's Palace MGM scenario again, it's alleged that Caesars was asked to pay $30 million ransom. They didn't. They paid 15, and they got back up and running. That's what has been reported. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But in the MGM case, it was reported that they had an offer to pay a ransom and chose not to. And again, it was reported that they're probably losing $15 to $18 million a day while they're trying to figure out how to get their systems back up and running. So it's the old question: if I pay it, are they going to come back? There was a time they didn't, because they figured, if you paid it once, good on you. I got you. You paid me. I'm gone. That's not necessarily the case again. There's lots of companies that do get hit again.
So is it legal to pay a ransom in the United States?
I don't know if it's legal.
I
never
don't really hear about it being talked about as much, but I thought you weren't legally allowed to pay a ransom. And anyone online, please comment if I'm wrong there. But I left a comment recently on someone's LinkedIn thread talking about, if I'm the board of directors of a company, I feel a lot better about myself being over at Caesars than MGM right now, right? Like, how is that going to influence the way executives and company leadership going forward says, like, oh, we should just pay because remember Caesars and MGM, right? Like, I think it's continue to set a precedent. Like, they have to look out for the best interest of their shareholders, and by not paying a ransom, you might not be looking out for your shareholders. Clearly, if you don't do anything and fix it and get hit again, like we always hear about these guys getting hit more than once, it's pretty bad. But from a motivational perspective and a fiduciary duty as a board member of a company, you can kind of sign off on saying, hey, let's pay the ransom. It's reasonable.
Well, to that point, I don't know how far it's gone, but I know that there were measures being introduced, I know in the US and I believe in Canada, where it's becoming a requirement that there must be at least one board member responsible for cybercrime prevention and having knowledge about cybercrime prevention, which would include cyber insurance, the path you take. Do we pay a ransom? Do we not pay a ransom? I haven't heard that it's illegal to do it. That's new to me.
Right.
I'm not saying it isn't.
As far as I read, it said it's still legal, I guess.
As far as I know, it is.
I thought there was some, at least they were toying with a law. I guess it never got passed in 2022. Well, there it is. Proposed Ransomware and Financial Stability Act would prohibit U.S. financial institutions from making a ransom payment greater than $100,000, but it never got passed. So,
okay. Thank you for whoever threw that in there.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. You talk about paying ransoms. One of the organizations that has historically been targeted a lot is law enforcement agencies. And I know through the south of the states, there was a period of time there where they hit 12 or 15 of them almost back to back. The unfortunate part was the law enforcement agencies they were hitting didn't really have the budgets to have super advanced backup procedures, recovery procedures. And I know there were a few cases, I believe one was in Louisiana, that I researched, where they didn't have any backup. I mean, they virtually didn't have backup of their files, of their investigations, which I couldn't believe that when I read it. And so what do? One of the best targets in the world to go after are essential services. So ambulance, fire, police, whatever, because they can't afford to be down. It's that simple.
Yeah.
So when somebody goes in and says to a police station, we got you, you're locked down, and pay us $10,000 or you're not coming back up again, then they do it. But one other point I want to make is that, and this addresses your question about the legality of paying. I do know that a couple of years ago, and I found when I was doing some researching, that some of the viruses, some of the malware that were coming in were so advanced that the probability of an organization recovering from it were between slim and none, certainly in a short period of time. And I do know that there was a period of time, maybe it still is, where the FBI was actually saying to people, if you're hit with this ransom, pay it. Where 5 years ago, it was the opposite.
Right. Wow.
If you get hit, don't just pay the ransom. There's a way around it. But some of these attacks are so severe now, and particularly the ones that come in and say, like NotPetya, for example. NotPetya was bad for a whole lot of reasons. But when they took down Maersk, they took down Cadbury, and they took down all these other companies, the problem with NotPetya, as opposed to Petya, is that in the case of Petya, it was, we have your system, we've got you locked up, pay the ransom, you can have your system back. But in the case of NotPetya, they were already destroying your files. They didn't tell you that. It was pay us a ransom and away you go. But in fact, if you paid the ransom, you weren't going to get your files back. And there's more and more of that type of malware out there.
Usually the ransomware guys are pretty credible, actually, right? They usually do unlock you. Whether they keep your data and destroy it, like, I don't know. That's
I don't know either.
You're not signing a like an employee exit, like, I will not use the data, right? Like, it's not very clean, a clean exit, I'm sure, but at a bare minimum, like, you're unencrypted, you're up and running again. So, but that's surprising that these guys are that's just bad for them, though, right? Like, if they actually don't, if you do pay and they don't act, like, then less people are going to pay. So,
well, that's true, and that's been the argument from day one. Is you say, well, why would I pay? Because if I pay and they hit me again, or I don't get my data back, to your point exactly. That's why for so long it was pay the ransom and we'll give you your data back. Because if the reputation of that particular virus or that hacking group was, no,
right,
they don't give you the data back, you just would never pay it.
right.
So how is that advantageous to the adversary if they actually don't make any money? Right.
Absolutely.
Um,
We started
did you
talking
want
a little bit about Dwell, and then Tim jumped on. I think that's interesting, right? Like, talk about, and I got another question as well, just in terms of, like, where are the majority of adversaries located geographically?
there's some great maps you can go on. Just
Okay.
go into the internet and type it on, and they're live maps of actual cyber attacks that are occurring.
And is that like IP address, like back geoloc, like,
Right, geolocation, things like that. And I don't have the link handy right now, but I used some of those when I was writing some papers. It would boggle your mind. It's a map of the world and it's live. It's showing actual streams like this of country to country to country. It's just a mass of attacks. They're going on in milliseconds around the world. So when you say, where are the major ones coming from? They're coming from everywhere. There isn't a country in the world that I've ever heard of that doesn't get involved in this type of thing, either from trying to monitor whether they are being attacked and who's doing it, but with the fact that you have Tor and you're using bots and messaging is all broken up and you can't really reverse engineer those messages in any expeditious way, then the best you can do is try to see where's it coming from. But it could be China, it could be Russia, it could be Ukraine, it could be the
there's
US,
reroutes.
could be anywhere.
And I know that there was a theory that it went down for a while, like when the Ukraine war, because a lot of them were on the border or, like, involved in the military. So it seemed like there was a decline, right? The timing of it was right when the Ukraine war kicked off. But obviously there's still factories of people in third world countries in Asia that are using the, North Korea is using this as their number one export, right? So
Absolutely. And down's a relative term, isn't it? I agree with you. I heard the same thing, that they went down when the conflict started, but down to what and down from what? It's nonstop. And keeping in mind that algorithms are used, restore backups. Um, um, a huge percentage of these attacks are done algorithmically anyway. It's not somebody sitting there, hitting enter like this,
Right.
doing attacks. They write these phenomenal scripts, and it goes out and does it all by itself. It's a numbers game. So it's like a phishing attack versus a spear phishing attack. Phishing attack is general.
Yeah, they keep saying like the small don't get hit. I'm like, that's exactly who does get hit, right? Like
a lot of people do.
Yeah, because it's like
they
don't really care. They're as you said, it's a quantity game, not a quality game. We're not trying to like bag an elephant, right? Now it's like, well, I don't care, Well, $500 here and $500 there, like, right?
And they prey on this because people have believed for so long, well, why would they ever come after me? I'm just someone. I'm not rich. I'm not this. I'm not that. But to your point, exactly, $100, $200, $500. If you can get that 15,000 times a day because the attacks are going out, automated attacks, that's a nice day at work, and you're not going to get caught probably anyway. And they're also getting way more aggressive. We have a very close friend who is in her 80s. She's very sharp. She owned her own business for 60 years and sold a little while ago. And she called me in a bit of a fit about a month ago and said, somebody's on my computer. I'm trying to do something. My screen went black. And all of a sudden there's these instructions that we have your computer, but we can fix it. We're Microsoft, so call this number and blah, blah, blah. So she didn't know what to do. So she phoned, and she's not computer illiterate, but she'd never had this happen. So she phoned the number and they said, hi, thanks for calling Microsoft. She said, I've got this message on my screen that there's a problem. They said, yes, we can get in and fix it if you'll let us get on your system. So they get on the system, and she's watching, and they're bouncing around. Next thing, they're in her Amazon account, and they're doing all these things.
Yeah.
And she started to freak out. So this message came out. She said, what are you doing? Because they were actually communicating to her. A woman's voice was communicating to her. And she said, if you're looking for my banking information, I don't bank online. And she doesn't. So I don't know what you're looking for from me, but you're not going to get it. And it said, do not turn your computer off. Do not turn your computer off. And so she said to me, what do I do? It says, if I turn my computer off, it'll blow up. I said, turn your computer off. She said, but it'll blow up. I said, well, you can't do anything on it right now anyway. And of course, once she turned it off and turned it back on, she was fine. It didn't happen. It was fine. But again, what if they'd gotten $1,000 out of her? What if they'd gotten $2,000 out of her?
Yeah, no, it's really sad. Story of mine. My father was injured really badly and was put into kind of like almost a convalescent home. And there's people that'll just walk in because these people have spinal and neural injuries, right? Like they're totally out of it. And they'll actually come in and be like, walk into a room and be like, hey, what's your password? And these people will, like, it's amazing how much of that's happening from people that aren't mentally with it, but they still have access to all their services. And that's a huge amounts of money moved around, things like that.
That's a great example of social engineering, Tim, because here's somebody who's dependent on those people.
Right.
And they're in an unfortunate situation. There's a trust element. These are the people that get me fed. These are the people that get me up and walking around. And if they're asking for my password, there's got to be a reason. I mean, I've known this person for so long. But I know you said you may want to cut off early. Did you want to talk about AI at all?
Yeah, I mean, why don't we give it 3 more minutes? If you want to talk about AI a little bit, and then we'll just kind of wrap it up.
Okay. I think
in the rain.
Yeah, I think that AI is at this point revolutionizing and will revolutionize cybercrime to levels we have never, ever, ever seen. This whole concept of creating voice and deep fakes and that. I say to people, wait till the 2024 election. It's going to be a riot to watch all these things that apparently people are saying out there that they're not saying at all. But the grandparent scam, where the voice is so real. There was somebody I was on with yesterday who went to a site. It's called Resemble. I haven't been to it, where you can actually record 25 sentences And then they now have a voice print, and you can use that voice print to create anything using ChatGPT or whatever. And I said, did you have to sign up? He said, uh-huh. I said, did you give it like a username, password, email address? Yeah, I did all that. I said, so how do you know it was a legitimate company? Resemble maybe a legitimate company, but maybe there's other ones out there that aren't. And it could be a cyber criminal sitting there saying, hey, you want to have some fun with your voice? Sign in, give me your email, password, mother's maiden name, whatever it is. Give us voice prints, and away we go. But with a matter of seconds of someone's voice print, they
There's
can
all,
emulate
yeah, there's
anything they want.
all different angles of imagination, right? In terms of contextual,
Right.
the ability to mimic, right? Like not only from a voice perspective, but also from a contextual, like, how would this person talk? Like, what is their behavior? Like, how do they act? Right? Like, how they
What's
move
a good?
around, right? Like machine learning, right?
Yes.
You're talking neural networks, but we're talking about unsupervised learning as well, right? So I mean, it is a scary aspect out there.
Well, where's this going to go with MFA, for example? With
Well, no,
AI,
we actually
voice
had a great
print.
great episode last week about FIDO keys, and about encryption and how they're like basically 99% social engineering resistant, right? So I mean, there are some things, these best practices that'll make it very difficult,
Mhm.
just with that encryption. But as you said, like, yeah, there's but everyone's not going to ship the FIDO keys overnight, as we know. It's going to like
Of
half
course.
the people don't even have MFA enabled. So,
Right.
um,
It's just going to
so
make it tougher and tougher for organizations and individuals everywhere. The AI is almost frightening in what, and machine learning and AI, what it will do. I was published with Dr. Robert Cadigan from Boston University writing about the generational aspects of AI and how the difference is between younger and older people and understanding what's going on. And I think we have a new wave of cybercrime coming that is going to be very, very challenging for all of us.
yeah,
And
for
how we're
sure.
going to, how are you going to know when that phone rings? By the way, I should say in that note that vishing, voicemail hacking, is now taking off like it never has before,
Yep.
ever.
Yep.
It's becoming a very powerful way to hack people and
Well,
organizations.
you've got a lot of great references. I know you had a book out. Drop it in the comments. Maybe you could also kind of list it if people want to go search for it. But this has been awesome, Chris. Got to have you back in the future here. Any other kind of closing thoughts? There's a BU guy here, and this guy King.
Perfect. There you go. I
um,
close every presentation I do with don't be quick to click. I know it sounds kind of corny, but uh,
go the
the
long way.
area,
Go
yeah,
log in the other way, right? Yeah. I just
it's
take it as
not,
signal. Never click anything directly. There's no shortcuts. Yeah.
yeah, there's nothing that's that urgent that's ever going to hit your email. There's nothing that urgent that's going to hit your cell phone, your smartphone, that you have to instantaneously respond. That's obviously a red flag if you've got 2 minutes to respond to this deal or whatever.
Yeah.
But take the time. It's getting more and more difficult to, even if you hover over a sender's name using certain fonts, a one can look like an L, those kinds of things where you don't even know what you're up against. But I say to people, slow down. It's not a race. Just do the best you can. But in the event that something were to happen, call your bank, call the police, call somebody, and certainly your credit card company if you think something has gone awry. And don't just sit there and think that's okay. I'd feel stupid if I called. I think that's one of the biggest problems. People feel victimized. They think they'll be criticized for being hacked. I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. If you're
Right.
going 200 miles an hour and you click on an airline promotion, then all of a sudden you look and you realize that's not an airline promotion at all. What did I just do? Bang, you're in an instant restore of your system.
Dick's
Try to get rid of
Sporting
the
Goods.
Malware. Absolutely.
We were
So,
we were laughing about that one. I think everyone's getting Dick's Sporting Goods. Everyone's getting the free camping gear.
yeah.
Free Yeti cooler.
There you go.
I got to jump, but this has been great, Chris. Next week, next episode, I think we're talking about, we've got a very polished, mature MSP on. Chris Hoban, I believe his name is. And we probably have another MSP as well, just talking about some of their best practices, some of their hard learnings, some of the things they're doing now to be successful, growing, profitable. So, Chris, this was great. A lot of good detail, a lot of good context about how attackers operate. So,
let me just close with this. Your question about how can we be more safe? People in organizations have one question to ask their board and their senior management, or C-suite. CSO goes in and they say, we really can't afford, we don't have the money to do this and this and this, social engineering training, whatever. And my one response would be, as a CISO, can we afford not to?
yeah,
If we get hit and we get shut down and our business goes down, what's that going to cost us in comparison to spending some extra money that you don't think we have? But let's get out, let's train the end user, let's make sure that we're as cyber safe, cyber secure as possible. It'll cut down our cyber insurance rates. It'll make us a more secure site and make us less prone to being out of business and not being a going concern anymore. It's no longer a choice. The money has to be spent for cybersecurity.
Good stuff. Well, everyone, we'll catch up next week, and thanks for stopping in again.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely.